Hello and welcome to the first edition of Fighting Words. I'm your host, Dyllon Braun, with my co-host, Kevin Stanfield. Basically, we're going to be running down fight night, Johnny Hendricks versus Stephen Thompson. So without further ado, let's get into it. Main event.
Yeah, Stephen Thompson and Johnny Hendricks, man, this is a razor close fight, about as close as you can get. Stephen Thompson is coming off a 5-fight win streak, including a KO win of Jake Ellenberger via spinning hook kick.
Yeah, and anytime you can knock out Jake Ellenberger, that guy's got a hell of a chin. It's pretty impressive. And in the fashion he's done it in the last couple fights, he's riding a wave.
Yeah, riding a wave, no doubt. And as you said, Jake Ellenberger is an absolute stud. So Johnny Hendricks is going to have his hands full in this one. But with 47% KO, TKO percentage of his wins, he definitely has the knockout power to end this one early.
Oh yeah, and that's something we came accustomed to from the big rig. But I mean, with his last fight, and granted, Matt Brown's a hell of a fighter with probably one of the best chins in the business. You wanna see that finishing aspect from Johnny Hendricks. You want to see the old Johnny Hendricks per se. No questions about um, fatigue or conditioning or his diet, nothing like that.
Yeah, as you alluded to, that unanimous decision win in Johnny Hendricks' last fight against Matt Brown. Matt Brown is one hell of a gritty guy and tough to look good against. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Johnny Hendricks has a penchant for leaving it in the locker room sometimes and doesn't really step on the gas when the fight is on the line.
Yeah, and with stepping on the gas definitely comes to light now when you see guys like Benson Henderson, who had a habit of not finishing fights, basically get thrown to the wayside and accept a contract from Bellator.
Yeah, that's a great point, and kudos to Bellator. They really got a coup for that one. But yeah, definitely, that's got to be on a guy like Johnny Hendricks' mind. He's really got to string some finishes together.
Yeah, and the more and more I look at it, the more I'm really hoping we could see the old Johnny Hendricks because I feel like he could try to wrestle with Stephen Thompson and take him down, and although I don't think it'll work for him, I think that will be like his best bet in scoring points and possibly, finishing the fight if he comes in with the right mindset, the right conditioning.
Yeah, taking down Stephen Thompson is a hell of a task. He's defending 58% of his opponent's takedowns. But yeah, I think the key for Johnny Hendricks to win this fight is to really put his chin in Stephen Thompson's chest and just really bring the fight to him. Don't let him get off those crazy karate kicks.
Yeah, and another thing I feel like gives Stephen Thompson the edge is just the ranking system. I'm sure there's a little bit of chip on his shoulder coming in a 5-fight win streak and being number 8 as opposed to Johnny Hendricks number 2.
Yeah, but imagine a win over Johnny Hendricks here on Saturday, man. He's got to be especially if he can pull together an impressive finish. If he gets an impressive finish over Johnny Hendricks, then I would say that he's next in line for a title shot.
Okay, so let's take our picks. Who do you got and why?
Man, I got to go with Wonder Boy. I think this fight's going to resemble the Anthony Pettis Eddie Alvarez fight in a lot of ways, but I don't think Hendricks is going to be able to hold Stephen Thompson down, and I think Stephen Thompson is going to fight off those takedowns and really be able to let loose with his karate combinations.
I think if it goes to decision, we see a win by Johnny Hendricks. There's some veteran grit, but you're right. I think Stephen Thompson more or less finishes him in the second round, possibly by TKO or KO. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Big Country versus The Big Show, Roy Nelson and Jared Rosholt. Um, what do you think is going to happen, and what are your thoughts on the fight?
Well, what can you really say about Roy Nelson? He's a big, burly heavyweight that hits really hard. He 67% KO and TKO in his wins. He has good jiu-jitsu. Doesn't use it nearly as often as you would like. And he's going up against a good wrestler, Jared Rosholt, who has a 44% takedown accuracy and is averaging 2 takedowns in his fights.
Yeah, a guy like Roshaw is a guy that Roy Nelson needs to stand up and bang with, and I feel like we say that a lot about Roy Nelson because his game never becomes well or never comes around. He's not very well versed. He's a guy that's not great at one thing, and uh, I think this could be the end of Roy Nelson. If he loses.
Well, the thing is, Roy Nelson, he is well versed. He just way too often looks to end the fight by that big right hand instead of really putting his full game together. And yeah, about this being the end of Roy Nelson, I'm not so sure. Maybe definitely if he was in another
Well,
division,
well,
definitely if he.
you're looking at a guy that's only won one fight in his last six, and given his history with, I mean, I know he doesn't pan out to be Mr. Popular with Dana White, but I mean, there's got to be some questions about that.
Yeah, that is true. I just think that heavyweight is such historically a thin division. Where a guy can get away with losing a string of fights in a row. But yeah, you're right. Dana White has no love for Roy Nelson.
Yeah, and I mean, and that one fight is a KO against washed up Antonio Nogueira. A- And before that, you've got a loss to DC, a loss to Stipe. So it's very stiff competition. I don't want to make it sound like he's been losing to a bunch of scrubs, Mark Hunt, Josh Barnett, Alistair Overeem. But
Yeah, and we have seen a guy like Chet Congo, end up leaving the UFC and going to Bellator. So yeah, it could definitely happen. And Roy Nelson is definitely the type of fighter that Bellator would love to have. So yeah, I can see it happening.
yeah, I mean,
Maybe even if he wins this fight, but looks awful doing it,
yeah,
maybe.
there's big question marks around this guy. On the flip side, what do you think a win could do for Rosholt?
Oh, Rochal, that could catapult him into he would be a major title contender. The thing about this card is there's at least 4 fights on this card with title implications, and Rochal, yeah, a win over Big Country would be huge, but he's gonna need to have an impressive win. I kind of see this fight being boring in a lot of ways.
How so?
Well, Jared Rosholt, I see him using his wrestling in this fight. And a lot of times, especially in the heavyweight division, as the fight goes multiple rounds, you know, um, a heavyweight wrestling match doesn't always equal a great spectacle.
Yeah, I look for Jared Rosholt to probably test him with his wrestling, uh, and bring down Roy Nelson stamina wise and maybe finish the fight. But you never know. You're looking at a guy that's almost got a 4 inch reach advantage as well. He could pace the fight out and just try to make Roy Nelson tired and win it by decision. I'm really up on the air with this one, but I think Roy Nelson comes out with the chip on his shoulder. Whether he eats it or not is another question. Um, but I think
Hopefully, he doesn't get any stuck in that beard.
right. I think he comes out with the chip on his shoulder, and I could see him. I could see him probably winning by a decision if I had to take a guess at it. But this is just as big as a flip of a coin as the previous fight.
Is Roy Nelson your official pick?
Yeah, Roy Nelson. I think he'll surprise a few people. As much as I hate to say it, I'm not a big Roy Nelson fan.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of see Jared Rosholt with the advantage in this one, so I'm going with Jared Rosholt.
Fight number three, Ovince St. Preux against Rafael Cavalcante. We've got two guys that are ready to make an impact, or well, I should say Rafael Cavalcante is looking to make an impact while Ovince St. Preux is streaking.
Yeah, OSP is a house of fire right now. They both have a common opponent in Ryan Bader. They both actually lost to Ryan Bader.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the record for Rafael Cavalcante is pretty telling. I mean, he's a spotty fighter, and game planning against a guy like Oven St. Preux, who, I'll be honest, I didn't see this coming. For each fight, he seems to get better. I remember the first time I really took notice of OSP was when he beat Shogun by KO, and ever since then he seemed to have this edge about him.
Yeah, definitely. He also has that KO win over Patrick Cummins, and a lot of guys laugh at a guy like Patrick Cummins, but let me tell you, that guy is no joke. Yeah, he got handled by DC, but that's DC. He's the light heavyweight champion right now.
Yeah, you don't get to the highest point in the business without having some type of chin. Um, oh, I've watched a few cuts of Rafael Cavalcante's fights, and he reminds me of like a just like a hang and bang type guy. He'll try to get in the pocket with you, kind of like somebody like a Frankie Edgar or something like that. Maybe not to that skill level, but I think for him, that doesn't bode well against a guy like OSP who has a 7-inch reach advantage, and I know he'll be looking to use it.
Yeah, well, Feijao has 12 wins, all by knockout, and if he can follow the blueprint that Glover Teixeira set against OSP, then I think he could fare well in this fight. That being said, I have the advantage going to OSP. I mean, he's like I said, he's a house of fire. He's landing 54% of his takedowns with 63% takedowns defended. And yeah, man, I kind of see him putting on a wrestling clinic.
Yeah, not only is he efficient in the wrestling game, the way when he does strike, he does it efficiently, and he builds upon each strike. You know, he's not looking to just leg kick you repeatedly. He's going to hit different parts of the body.
Yeah, definitely no waste of motion. You're really looking at a complete MMA fighter whenever you look at a guy like OSP.
Any surprises you see coming from this fight? Anything that people should look out for?
Surprises? I don't see any surprises necessarily. Like I said, if Feijao can do what Glover Teixeira did against OSP, then I mean he could get a win, and a win against OSP is something that he could build off of. But I just don't see it happening on Saturday.
All right. So the first fight we picked the same. The last fight I had Roy Nelson. Who do you got in this fight and why?
Uh,
Quickly.
I have I have OSP. I think his wrestling is just gonna get the job done.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one. I don't know that he will win by decision. I think if he does out wrestle him and he sees that he has that advantage early, he'll look to finish the fight.
Oh
Whether
no, I have OSP by submission. Just to be clear.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, exactly. I feel like I like the killer instinct that OSP has, and I feel like if he knows early on in the fight, he'll finish it. So yeah, I've got OSP in this one too. Fight number three: Joseph Benavidez and Zach Funsize Makovsky. What do you think we should expect from this fight, and how do you think it's gonna go?
Well, both of these guys have championship experience. They both fought Demetrius Johnson. Zach Makovsky went 5 rounds with Demetrius Johnson, which is pretty damn impressive. Joseph Benavidez, on the other hand, got knocked out pretty early. It wasn't an impressive showing.
Yeah, and I remember so much buzz being behind Benavidez when he joined the UFC, and he even strung some fights together. He's definitely an impressive fighter, no doubt. That's why he's ranked number one. But anytime some you're going to get somebody that stood with the guy that put you out like that, that's got to be in your head just a little bit.
Yeah, Joseph Benavidez, he's such a great fighter, and he would be a champion in any other company. Just unfortunately, he shares a division with a guy who I think is the number one pound for pound fighter in the world right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I really feel like this fight could go either way. Makovsky seems to have a knack for letting it go to the judges' hands, which might not bode well for him against Benavidez, but you never know.
Yeah, well, Makovsky is averaging 3 takedowns in his fights. So but Joseph Benavidez is not an easy guy to take down. So it's so hard to see how this fight can go. I can see it going so many ways.
Yeah, I think I would lean more towards Zach Makovsky in this one. I mean, Joseph Benavidez, he's strung together 4 wins since his last loss, but they've all been by decision. And I think if he tries to go 5 rounds with a dude like Makovsky, Makovsky could win by points.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Joseph Benavidez, if he can control the center of the octagon, he's defending 60% of his opponent's takedowns. If he can really control the pace of this fight, then I can see him coming out with a win, and I do have the advantage going to Benavidez. But, if you're Dana White, you're real hesitant to put Joseph Benavidez in another title match. But I don't see them denying him a title shot if he beats Makovsky on Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this fight goes in terms of where they fight, whether it's going to be on uh on the feet or somebody tries to take it down. Because if you look, I mean, Joseph Benavidez only has 29% takedown accuracy, and on the flip side of the coin, Makovsky's got 57% defended, so it's going to be a stout matchup, and I wonder how it's going to go.
Yeah, I kind of see Makovsky really pushing for the takedown, and I'm sure he gets at least one of them. But he's going to have a hard time keeping Benavidez down, I think.
Yeah, with my pick, I'm going Makovsky. I think he wins it by decision, and the only way he loses is by by a knockout or TKO if he gets finished. I think he's going to surprise a few people, maybe move up in the rankings.
I'm going Benavidez by submission.
All right, and now let's move on to the fourth fight. We've got Mike Pyle against Sean Spencer in a welterweight fight. What do you expect to see, and who do you got?
Jeez, this fight is so hard to predict. It can really go either way. Uh, jeez. Mike Pyle with 73% of his takedowns defended. While on the other hand, Sean Spencer, 68% of his takedowns defended. I think this is definitely a fight that we're going to see contested on the feet. And a fight on the feet, I think the advantage goes to Sean Spencer. Mike Pyle, if he's going to finish a fight, he's more likely going to do it by submission.
Yeah, Mike Pyle's a guy. Quicksand's fitting because sometimes it looks like he can be in quicksand. He doesn't push the pace as much as you'd like. A veteran guy, he's 40 years old. I think he looks for his openings, and as you mentioned it, he wins a lot of fights by submissions, and I'm a fan of that. He's got over 10 fights by submission in his 26-11 record.
Yeah, he's a submission expert. Sean Spencer, on the other hand, you know, um, well, as I said, he's not a guy that's going to be taken down easily. And this fight on the feet, I don't really see Sean Spencer finishing Mike Pyle. I don't think Mike Pyle is going to get knocked out that easy. And if this ends up going to decisions, Sean Spencer's 67% of his wins are by decision. So, if it goes to decision, then I think Sean Spencer is definitely pulling this one out.
Yeah, and if you look at just his significant strikes per minute, 446 to Mike Pyle's 265. So that Sean Spencer's going to come out and push the pace. It's just a matter of the chin of Mike Pyle. So you got Sean Spencer winning. Is that what you got?
Yeah, Sean Spencer and punches and bunches is going to be his recipe for success.
Oh yeah, same here. That's what I'm going with. I mean, I like Mike Pyle. I like the submission. I hope he proves me wrong and pulls one out, but I think Sean Spencer's just going to be too much for him. And in our wrap-up fight, we've got Ray the Taz Mexican Devil against Justin Scoggins. Who do you got and why?
I got Justin Scoggins in this fight, man. There's a lot of hype behind Ray Borg right now, but Justin Scoggins, man, his takedown defense is off the chart, defending 78% of his takedowns. And with a guy like Ray Borg who's looking to get the submission, I just think that this fight favors Justin Scoggins.
You know, I'm inclined to agree with you, but when I look at Justin Scoggins, this guy came in red hot. He was 9-0 and winning by TKO, submission, decision. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, he did win with one standing guillotine choke, but he was finishing fights. And then before his loss, his two losses in a row, he won by decision. And his last fight, he won by decision, albeit unanimous. You got to wonder like what that does to a fighter's psyche whenever he's so used to finishing a fight and things don't go his way.
Yeah, I can see that. Also, if you look at the takedown, the wrestling aspect of this, that they're both averaging 4 takedowns per fight, and I think that that's outstanding. I think we're really in for a lot of times wrestling matches in MMA can be boring, but I see this one. I see a lot of active scrambles, and I think we're in for a really fun grappling match. But as I said, I just see Justin Scoggins really surprising people with a victory on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be noted that they both share losses and decision to Dustin Ortiz. I mean, anytime uh, you psychologically go into a fight with something like that on the bill, that's got to like have a little added momentum for both of them, saying, "Yeah, I could take this guy." And me, I think Ray Borg will probably win, and I'm calling it right now, split decision. It's going to be a close fight, but if if he doesn't finish it, I think Ray Borg takes this one. And I'm a big fan of Scoggins too. Nothing against him.
Yeah, I agree with the split decision. I just think it's going in the favor of Scoggins.
And that does it for the Fighting Words podcast. I'm Dylan Braun, co-host Kevin Stanfield, signing off.